Okay, so this year I read a lot of books and I wrote notes down at the end of each book so that I would be able to kind of reflect on later. This is the culmination of that. So books, although I don't have all the physical copies anymore, these are the ones I have the physical copies of, but I read 18 books this year. And let me break down the rating scale. So I'm choosing a rating scale out of 5. So a 5 is a must read. Like you gotta read this at some point in your life. 4, probably should read it at some point. 3 out of 5, it's a worth reading. It's like, I'm not gonna be like, hey man, you need to read this book. You gotta do it right this second. But it's like, it's worth reading. Yeah. It's 2 out of 5, not worth reading. It's like, not necessarily bad, but it's just, I wouldn't say it's like, I wouldn't recommend it. If someone's reading it, I'd be like, why are you reading that? Like, it's not really worth reading. There's not a lot of 2s and 1s out of 5 on this list. And most books I think are worth reading. And then 1s out of 5s, don't read. Just stay away from them. They're not very good. They're trash, genuine waste of times. Like, I don't know why. Like, I would actively recommend it against reading them because I just did not think they had any value whatsoever. So let's start with the first book. So the first book I read this year was The Rebel by Albert Camus. Good book. I would give it actually a 5 out of 5. Very good book, in fact. This is the book I was reading over New Year's. So I started reading it when I was in Vietnam. And it took me a fair amount of time to get through because I was really taking time to digest the material. Camus' ideas on rebellion and revolution changed kind of how I think about rebellion and revolution. TBH, I already agreed with most of his points before reading his book, but how he got to those conclusions made me think deeper about pretty much all of my values. So yeah, The Rebel, recommend. It's not too long. How many pages is this guy? 300-ish pages. It definitely takes a while, and it's very dense. Every sentence was written intentionally. Like, you can really tell. And he uses big words, scary. I'm sure there's tons of video essays out there about all these books that I'm going to list off. This is more just me saying that I read them and my basic thoughts on them. I don't want to make this an hour-long video. So if you want to look up video essays on those, you can do that. That's not my job, though. So the second book I read this year was called The Last Wish. And I'm not even going to try to pronounce the author's name. And also, it was an audiobook. So technically I didn't read it, but shut up, it's my list. So I've been meaning to read the Witcher books for a long time, mainly so that I'm equipped to play the games. And I have the first 2 games on Steam already, but I haven't played them because I want to read the books. And this first book was pretty decent. Nothing was really super special or blew me away or anything, but I really liked Geralt's character, and I also really liked the vibes of the stories. It's a bunch of short stories, basically all in the world of The Witcher, following Geralt of Rivia, going around doing his thing. And yeah, they're all pretty decent. I mean, nothing really blew me away. So yeah, I'd give The Last Wish 3 out of 5. So worth reading. The next book I read is actually part 8 of JoJo, called JoJolion. I don't have a physical copy because I read it online. And this was actually the first book I properly read after The Rebel. And I wanted something a little bit lighter and more familiar because I already really liked JoJo. It started off actually really good, and I was wondering if it was going to be my favorite part of JoJo. But then around the halfway mark, I felt like all the interesting mysteries had been solved, and I kind of lost interest in the plot. I think if it wasn't JoJo, I probably would have dropped it maybe 2/3 of the way in. I would say, yeah, it gives it a 3 out of 5, so worth reading, and not lower because the roughly first half of it was almost perfect, in my opinion. I think some slight tweaks would have vastly improved the story overall. Next book, Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Hopefully I said that name right. I heard this book was one of the best books of all time. Basically, I've been hearing that my entire life. So I got it for my birthday last year, and I was so excited to read it. And I completely understand why it's considered such a magnum opus now. I think if it was a little bit more focused on the main character, Raskolnikov, I would have given it a 5 or even a 6 out of 5. It was so good. And I think it has genuinely some of the best moments in all of fiction, in my opinion. Like the part where he's behind the locked door, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you read the book, oh my God, so good. And just his mental processes afterwards is just peak. The problem is the middle third of the book becomes about his sister, and I just didn't care about her at all. Like, I wanted to know about Raskolnikov and his inner turmoil. I didn't care about his sister's wedding or about her suitors or whatever. Like, I really did not care about the middle, probably third of this book, which really brought it down. I think if it was like a 200-page book, it would have been much higher on my list. I like concise things. I just don't like it when they just kind of, the middle third, bro. Like, what was the, it didn't, what was the point of it? And yeah, it was like 450 pages. But yeah, worth reading, for sure, worth reading. 4 out of 5. You actually should read it. If you want to read one of the best works of fiction probably ever. Maybe it just wasn't quite for me, though. I think the middle third, my problem was that had very little to do with crime and or punishment, and it kind of felt like Dostoevsky was just trying to make the book longer because long books were valued at the time. I don't know, though. Maybe, probably, I'm missing something. Still a very good book, though. I think everyone should read it at least once, especially if they're thinking about committing murder. 5th book this year that I read, Values by Mark Carney. I am so sorry, conservatives, but this book was fire. Like, I actually really enjoyed this book. This was actually, I would give this book also a 4 out of 5. It was I really appreciated it. And I really don't understand why I got so much hate online. Like I went online to look it up, and it's just like all these conservatives are like, this book is evil global homo, evil fucking wokeism. Okay. So then I read it. I actually started reading it the day after he got elected because I wanted to see what was wrong. Like, is he actually this evil, like, technocrat, like, oligarch guy? You know what I'm saying? So like, I was like, what's wrong with this guy? Like, what's the big deal? So I started reading the book, and good book. I think I also read it at a very good time because I was just kind of starting to think about starting my own business, and they talk about how to run businesses ethically in the book. I'd say it's definitely worth reading, and honestly, I'd say everyone in Canada really should read it, like, right away, because it really kind of taps into Carney's, like, ideology, you know? And from what I've seen, he's actually stuck to the book pretty closely from what I've seen. Also, this is one of those books that, like, there's just so many, like, little tidbits of information and just first-hand perspectives, and I feel like I want to go over it again with a highlighter and some sticky notes and just see, because there's some banger quotes in there. Honestly, there's just so much, like, wisdom and information crammed into this book that is hard to keep up sometimes. Like, there's just so much, like, just bam, 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 new stuff, and, like, he throws acronyms at you like fucking baseball player, and it's like, okay, I don't know what that acronym is, so I had to look up a bunch of stuff. But I think actually at the end of this book, I had a much better understanding of just economics and how the economy works and how politics works. And yeah, I really liked it. Really, the only main, like, actual complaint that I had was that he uses the same phrases several times and same metaphors several times, which I just found a little bit annoying, but it didn't bother me too much. I didn't necessarily agree with everything in this book, but he provides evidence and walks us through his reasoning. So even if you disagree, like I did with some of his takes, it is really helpful to see the path that he took to get to that conclusion. Overall, I was actually very impressed with this book. I only read it because the right were hating on it, and I wanted to see how bad it was, but it turned out to be fire, and I think most people who hate it haven't even read it, other than maybe a few out-of-context quotes. So yeah, Mark Carney Values, go for it. Should read. 4 out of 5. Next one I read was The JoJo Lands. JoJo Land is part 8 of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. The JoJo Lands is part 9. While this manga isn't anywhere near being finished yet, I caught up and remained caught up for the rest of this year after I finished Values. And honestly, depending on how this goes, it could be my favorite JoJo part and move up to 5 out of 5, like Steel Ball Run. The characters are extremely likable, and some of my favorite fight scenes in JoJo history are here. I really like how they kind of brought back, like, real-world weaponry into JoJo. Like, they'll be fighting and then with stands, and then somebody will just take out a gun and start shooting, and it's like, hell yeah! Like, the characters were just so raw, you know. And I really, big fan. Currently 4 out of 5. Could go up, could go down, depending on how it goes. And I highly recommend if you read manga. I think it's the best consistently ongoing manga that's airing right now. Like Berserk, obviously, I like Berserk a bit more, but it's not consistent. Next book I read, Brave New World. This book was really good. Like, damn. And I think it feels more relevant than ever to today's problems. And I feel like the character John was one of the most relatable characters I've ever read. Voicing complaints, I swear I have said myself. The prose is also incredible. The way the author describes everything just blows me away. The whole time it felt like I was looking at a moving oil painting in my mind. And this book's also really quite short, so there's not really much of a reason not to read it. I think it's 230, 220 pages. And yeah, like it just, damn, all of the writing, all of the way everything is just described is just so visual and just like colorful and so dystopian. It is such a messed up book. And like, I don't want to spoil it, but the last couple of pages, if you read this book, you know what I'm talking about. Damn. So yeah, Brave New World, 5 out of 5. Contender for my favorite book of the year, which I will go into at the end. 8th book I read, On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection. I would give this a 2 out of 5, but the rating is super misleading. This book is a masterpiece, but it is not really worth reading today. Darwin was way ahead of his time with some of his claims, and most of them ended up being correct, even with the limited data he was working with. I'd say it's not worth reading because it's 450 pages of stuff you already knew from middle school, but I'm super glad I read it because now I feel like I kind of understand the mind behind one of the most important theories ever. But honestly, for most people, this book is not going to be worth reading, just for biology nerds like me. So, yeah, it took me a bit to read, though. It took me a fair bit to read, but good book, not worth reading, 2 out of 5. Remember, numbers I'm giving are not based on the quality, they're based on recommendation. So yeah, keep that in mind for all these ratings. The next book I read, I actually don't have it with me. I was borrowing it from Sabrina. Is Astrophysics for People in a Hurry, and I would give it a 3 out of 5. This book was really quite good if you don't know very much about astrophysics, but I think that I was not the target demographic. Aside from anecdotal facts and stories, I think I knew pretty much everything that was in this book already. And it's not like I'm even going to astrophysics in school or anything. I feel like 80% of this book is at least covered in high school science classes, and the other 20% I mostly learned via YouTube over the years. Not to say that this book is bad, though, far from it. I think Neil writes in an extremely compelling manner and clearly knows what he's talking about. If you know nothing about astrophysics and want to learn, this book immediately becomes like a 5 out of 5, 6 out of 5 recommendation, and you should drop everything and read it. For people who finished high school recently, however, I think the priority is much lower. Still worth reading as a refresher, though, and I do think it is important to have books like these to get people interested. Because this is one of those subjects that I think should be mandatory and be part of everyday conversation, but is not. So I think if everyone read it, we'd be on a much more similar wavelength as a culture, society, whatever. 10th book I read also was a manga, and I don't have it physically, but it was Ramina. And I think it was my favorite cosmic horror book that I read that wasn't written by Lovecraft. No surprise that it was written by my favorite horror manga author, Junji Ito. I think it could have been fleshed out a little bit more to make me care about some of the characters more, but Ramina itself was just such a cool cosmic monstrosity that I really didn't mind too much. There were also some issues with the science, which I think bothered me even more as I had just been reading about astrophysics. Stuff like Ramina going faster than the speed of light and it having undiscovered elements and just that kind of goofy sci-fi stuff bothered me a bit. But yeah, definitely a should read for anyone who likes horror manga. 4 out of 5. Okay, so the 11th book I read this year was Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, aka, well, eventually kind of adapted into Blade Runner. This book was very loosely adapted into the Blade Runner movies, which I'm a big fan of, so I was looking forward to reading it. It's about a bounty hunter kind of hunting down androids, which is right up my alley. Don't like AI. Sorry, guys. The last couple of chapters of this book are genuinely breathtaking, as in my breath was taken away. But the book feels like the first maybe half or 2/3 of it are introduction. I really like the two main characters, and Mercerism was rather interesting to me. Maybe we should make it into a real religion or a school of thought. I feel like my favorite chapters were the ones where Rick is more introspective rather than his bounty hunting chapters, which make up the majority of the book. It's not a super long book, luckily, and I think that right around the time I was starting to get tired of the kind of bounty hunting introduction half of the book, right when I was starting to get tired of that, it started getting interesting. So I think it was well paced. And it's not very long, 200 pages. So yeah, I recommend giving it a read. I would give this a 4 out of 5. 12th book I read this year, Long Walk to Freedom by Nelson Mandela. Peak! This book is the autobiography of one of the most famous people of the past 100 years. So Nelson Mandela, who became more myth than man while he was in prison, wrote this book. And he actually talks about that exact phenomena in this book. And this book kind of goes through his life from basically his childhood all the way until he becomes president, basically. And to be honest, I really didn't know very much about him before reading this book, and it's such a good book. At first, I didn't really like it because even though it had a really good story, just the way it was written didn't really hit. Like, it was written kind of weird. I don't know. Like, I just didn't like how it was written. Up until when he's on Robben Island, I found his writing very kind of disjointed, dull, kind of like he was reciting facts for a school project. And then about the time of his arrival to the island, the prose became much more enjoyable to read. And I found that strange, very strange, until he mentions that he wrote most of the first half of the book after midnight in his cell when the guards were asleep, and then smuggled it to his friends on the outside. What? Literally so insane. So I completely retract my statement of the first half not being good because I understand what the hell was going on, and it makes it so much better knowing that he wrote that like in the worst possible situation ever. And that was really my only complaint about this book, so I retract it. I highly recommend this book to anyone who cares about really any aspect of humanity, because Nelson Mandela had a lot of that. Although this long, it's such a good look at at history, humanity, and just what it means to be free. So yeah, Long Walk to Freedom, highly recommend. 5 out of 5 if you couldn't catch that already. This is a must read. Following that, I read Think and Grow Rich. 1 out of 5. I did not like this book. First 1 out of 5 book of this whole review, actually. And I thought this book was going to be some kind of mindset to being rich book, which it kind of was, but holy moly did it go off the rails. Between the author claiming to have willed hearing aids into existence for his deaf son, your sexual mental vibrations being a way to commune with God, or telepathy being real if you try hard enough, there's just so much ridiculousness that I just laughed out loud genuinely throughout this book. I found that there are 3 genres of content throughout this book. You had the wacko nonsense pseudoscience, the basic shit everyone knows, and the book sucking itself off. I would say there was roughly equal amounts of each. I really did not like the arrogance of the writer, and I don't believe a single one of his claims to fame. I think he's a fraud who became rich by thinking of a book that makes the reader feel good about themselves without any of the knowledge necessary to ensure success. I really hated how every second or third paragraph was just a monologue on how amazing the book was. I think this book would have been high rated if the author didn't come off as such an annoying prick. There's some hilarious nonsense in here, though, that could have made it a 2 out of 3 just for the laughs, because genuinely, there was just... Apparently, he, talks to the spirits of Abraham Lincoln and is his boss? Crazy. Think and Grow Rich, not for me. Book number 14, Teachings of a Stoic. Controversial rating, but I'm going to give it a 2 out of 5. Sorry, gang. Sorry, Stoics. Sorry, PewDiePie. I'm sorry, guys. I personally just didn't get a lot out of this book. It was just very hard to follow most of the time, as most Greek and Roman philosophy books admittedly are. But the bits I did follow, I felt like I already knew from reading Seneca and Marcus Aurelius. And I think that many of the ideas in here are worth reading about. A lot of the ideas are 5 out of 5 ideas, that you really should know right away, or try to learn right away. But it just feels like the delivery was off. I feel you get a better sense of Epictetus's ideas from a Wikipedia article or a YouTube video, which highly controversial. I know, guys, I'm so sorry, but I just did not. This book just did not hit for me. I'm sorry. Don't really have much else to say. It just didn't hit for me. Didn't connect. Sorry. I really wanted this book to be a 5 out of 5 because Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, one of my favorite books. Really like Letters of a Stoic from Seneca. Really like that book too. Teachings of Stoic, I don't know what it was. I just didn't hit. The 15th book I read was The 48 Laws of Power, which I'm going to give a 4 out of 5. This book was pretty good, darn good, and I think everyone should read it. It's not a must read, but everyone probably should. And it takes a look at powerful people throughout history and notes laws that many of them followed to get that power. After reading it, I can totally see many of the laws in powerful people alive today. Some of the laws I've even started using myself to great effect. There's a lot of distilled wisdom here. There are some minor issues I have with it, though. The basic structure of this book is this. Each law is its own chapter. He introduces the law and then goes through examples of people through history using the law and then being rewarded for it, and people disobeying it and being punished. He then gives his interpretation of how the law impacted the example. My main issue with this book is that a lot of the examples really felt like a stretch. Like it would be something about it'd be about something completely unrelated, and I would forget what the law he was talking about was because of how unrelated the story was. The interpretation did just insane amounts of heavy lifting for some of the examples. Another issue I had was that a lot of laws were very similar and were basically just variants or additions to each other. Like the law of getting other people to do work for you, and then you claim the credit, and then the law of using a cat's paw for dirty work. Easily could have been the same law. Overall though, recommend 4 out of 5. Just a lot of distilled wisdom and just a lot of just things that kind of made you like there's a lot of things that since reading this book I've been able to notice about like things happening in the world. I'm like, oh, that law is being fulfilled. Oh, that law is not being fulfilled. That's why that person is failing. Book 16, Diary of Anne Frank. Damn. So most of you probably already heard of this book, but if you somehow hadn't, it's the diary of a young Jewish girl hiding from the Nazis during World War II. She was tragically murdered by the Nazis before the end of the war, and then her father published her diary years later, which became this book. The book is somehow soul-crushing and inspiring at the same time. Crazy how a teenage girl's diary became one of the most prominent voices of the Holocaust. Anne is just a fantastic writer, and you can see and feel everything she describes. There's a part of the book where she said that she wanted to become immortal through her writings, and I think she really succeeded in that. I think that it is really extremely important to read books like these, even if they are unpleasant and make you upset, especially in today's age of genocides. While not as cold and calculated as the mass murders the Nazis did to the Jews and Slavs in World War II, there's still genocides happening right now around the world. Off the top of my head, Palestinians in Palestine, Ukrainians in Ukraine, various ethnic groups in the Darfur region of Sudan, Uyghurs in China, Kurds in the Middle East, Rohingya people in Myanmar. Humanity, what are we doing? This is unacceptable. We gotta do better. We can't just sit around and just let this happen. Sorry, got on a bit of a side tangent, but yeah, Diary of Anne Frank, 5 out of 5 recommendation. Like you gotta read it, man. Crazy book. Okay, so crazy vibe switch, but next up, I read Freakonomics, 2 out of 5. This is the only book I actually came close to dropping. It's just so disjointed, and genuinely, I feel like I didn't learn anything I didn't already know. Probably the most forgettable book of the year for me. Basically, it was an economics book where they just take a bunch of data and then jump to conclusions about it. It was well written though, and I think if you didn't really already think in the way that they were thinking with like supply and demand, like economics and that stuff, and just how to get what you desire, if you don't think in the way of incentives already, it's a good read. But I already think that way. So nothing about it changed anything for me. Like it was just, I give it 2 out of 5. Not worth reading. Not I don't read. It's not terrible. It's just, his writing is really good. Yeah, that's kind of it. It's just kind of a well-written book about nothing, honestly. Like, sorry, Freakonomics fans. I know there's some of you out there, but yeah, this book didn't really hit for me. Maybe I just didn't get it. Sorry. And currently, this is the 18th book I've read this year, and I'm actually not done it yet. I'm still reading it. I'm actually pretty early on. I'm this far in, as you can see. And this is The Ideas That Made the Modern World. And it's basically just a breakdown of the Enlightenment in Europe, talking about famous figures, talking about the history of it, talking about the different ideas that came about from it. And yeah, so far I'm actually really enjoying it. Could be a potential 5 out of 5 for if I make it this video next year. Pretty good book so far. I'm not gonna include it in book of the year talk that I'm about to do, because I don't know if it's gonna be book of the year because I'm 58 pages in. So yeah, that's the book I'm currently reading. So book of the year, here are the contenders for my recommendation for the most. This is gonna be kind of what I feel like was the most impactful, most impactful to my brain and my mind, but also the most timely. Like it's like for 2025, it affects us the most. Like it's the most timely. Also, because of that definition I just did, I'm actually bumping up values to be 5 out of 5 because it is extremely timely. It's a must read for this year, I would say. The must reads for this year, these 5 books: The Rebel, Values, Brave New World, Long Walk to Freedom, and The Diary of Anne Frank. These are like the 5 books that I would say that I read this year that I would say are a must read for anyone living in 2025 and beyond. You're probably not gonna be able to read them by the end of this year because this year's almost done, but I would recommend them anyways. I'll do a countdown. So the 5th recommendation for book of the year, I would say, goes to The Rebel. Very good book, just not quite as timely as I feel like it could be, if you know what I'm saying. Like, I feel like the world right now is very we need rebellion, but we're not doing any kind of rebellion. We're just letting these oligarchs stomp over us. We're just letting all these horrible things happen to people. So because of our failings, this book is not quite as timely as it could be. I feel like if we were doing active revolutions, this book is extremely timely because it tells you how to do revolutions without creating something worse afterwards, you know? So hey, people in the Gen Z protests in Southeast Asia, read this book. But people in the West, we're kind of just not doing shit. Other books I read this year, number 5, book of the year, Rebel. Although I think another reason why this is also not higher is because I was about halfway through this book when I started this year, and it was so long ago, and like I just don't remember it quite as well as most of these other books. Next, I would say Long Walk to Freedom, 4th. This book I think is actually maybe the most enjoyable to read out of these books. Such just like a real heartfelt story, you know, and just the message of just love and just like forgiving your enemies, and you know, very good message. And Nelson Mandela is the GOAT. Like, sorry guys, he's just the GOAT. Very good book. If I was in South Africa, easily this would be my best book of the year. And there was actually a part of this book where he talks about going to Canada and seeing Inuit people who knew about him, and he thought that was crazy. That his name basically got around the world so much so that even Inuit people knew about him. This is one of my favorite books that I read this year, easily. That being said, I really did enjoy some of these other books, and some of them I feel like are a bit more timely. 3rd, Values. Holy moly, is this book timely? Because it's just an insight into the dude who's doing exactly what he said he was going to do in this book. I'm going to read it again at some point, probably. Maybe it'll be in the next year's book review as well. But yeah, he kind of just goes through 3 main issues. He goes through the 2008 financial crisis. He goes through climate change, and he goes through the COVID-19 pandemic. And he talks about the mistakes that government and other business officials did, and what they could do better, and how they need to improve. And he actually walks through, so he walks through the problems first, and then he walks through his solutions to these issues, which a lot of the solutions he's now doing, which I think is pretty crazy. Because he wrote this before he was even interested in politics, or maybe he wasn't, maybe he was interested, but before he was even running for politics. But yeah, Mark Carney Values, I would highly recommend checking out. Easily one of the most highly recommended books for if you're living in Canada, or if you're interested in Canada, if you're moving here or something, because this is just, it's the dude's manifesto, basically. I might actually make another video at some point just about values, because there's just so much just like stuff to talk about, and I'm really not touching on any of it in this video. Like, actually that's true for all these books. Like, I'm sorry guys, like there's so much stuff to touch on in all of these books, and I'm just giving you like basic thoughts. I think this is more, honestly, this video is more just for me to just look back on and just kind of remember the books I read this year. Second highest recommendation, Anne Frank's Diary. This goes back to when I was reviewing it. What the fuck? It's like, people, I feel like if you read this book, you feel like you just can't watch kids die anymore. Like, you gotta do something, you know? It's also just really well written, and she's just such a lovable person, and just, it's such a tragedy what happened to her, and just thinking about so many other Anne Franks around the world dying now, you know? It's just like, damn. That's my second most, because it's very timely because of all the genocides happening in the world, and really well written, and really like important to read. I think like this, I feel like maybe one of the most important books I've ever read. That being said, number 1 for this year is going to be Brave New World. The reason for that is we are living in this, like, what the actual hell? It's literally just like the world is just Brave New World now. Like, I feel like Brave New World and 1984 are kind of in this weird prophecy gray zone where everything that they've been describing is kind of happening, but not overtly enough for people to notice. And I know people say this a lot about 1984, but I think that's especially true with Brave New World. Like, Jesus, some of the stuff that's happening in this book is just like, whoa, I didn't even think about that, but that is exactly what I've been doing. Like, like I don't have social media anymore, as you probably know, or you might know. But like, look around and people, like, whenever they get bored, they can't take it, and they get really upset and they get sad, so they just start scrolling. That's fucking the drug in Brave New World. That is the exact thing that is in Brave New World. They just pop a pill and they feel better, and they go off to a magic land for a little bit. Instagram Reels, oh my God. I feel like it really just shakes you awake to like how dystopian our current world is now. And it really like shook me. I was like, whoa, we're like kind of in Brave New World already. Not fully, obviously. Maybe soon. Like, gang. We're becoming living in this weird dystopia where it's a mixture between Brave New World and 1984 and like 10 billion other dystopian things. But they're all happening at once, and we can't even get a grip on it to fight them. And it's like, what's happening? But yeah, those are my books that I read this year. And I know I went on a bunch of rambles and rants. And I don't know how long this video is going to be. Hopefully not too long. Hopefully not so long it bores you. But thanks for watching if you did watch it. And hi, future me, if you're watching this video. What book are you reading right now? Actually, future me, and not just future me, anyone who's watching this video, what book are you reading right now? If you're not reading a book, get on it, bro. Oh my God. Oh my God. You gotta get on the book grind. Books are just, they just hit, like there's just no way to convey information so succinctly and so like precisely as the written word, and books are just the final expression of the written word. I feel like they're good, and you can say so much. Like, you can have complete fictions like Brave New World. Well, I shouldn't say complete, but books that are not based in reality. You can have like true stories telling someone's horrific tales. You can have a book that's just nonfiction and just talking about a bunch of different ideas. And there's actually, I read several of those this year. Like, what else did I read? Like, this is just theories, and just, it's a book that changed how we think about the world. And there's so many books like this. Like, if I'm ever reading like Newton's Principia or something, like that's probably gonna be in the same category of just books that just change the world, with just their ideas, just the author's ideas. And because they managed to put them on paper and print, their ideas spread around the world, and the author is immortal now. Like Epictetus. This guy died like 2,000 years ago, and we're still talking about him for good reason. I mean, even if I didn't like the book in particular, his ideas are phenomenal. You can also have like Crime and Punishment, like books that weave ideas into the narrative and change how you think about things. You have Power, talking about giving you strategies to take over the world, basically. Like, books are just fantastic. You got to get on that reading grind. Yeah, I don't have anything else to say. But yeah. So yeah, that's my book review.